Okay, my name's Peter Martin. I'm here to talk about Brian Marriott.
My name's David Smith, long-term umpire in the Southern Football League, Southeast Suburban League originally, and friend of Brian Marriott, who is one of the greatest, the greatest goal umpire we've had in our league.
Rocked up at umpires training. One of the first people I met was an already legend of the Umpires Association, Brian Marriott. He was already the gun goal umpire. Goal umpires rep on the club committee, and a man who was always there to do everything. If he wasn't helping in the kitchen, sweeping the floors, one of those people that every club needs. A bloke who'll do just about anything. Brian became president, I became secretary. At a tough time for the association. There'd been some interesting relations with the league, and Brian was there to pour oil on troubled waters, and for 3 years he led the association in an absolutely fantastic way. Probably the most outstanding president their Umpires Association had.
He used to go out onto the ground and check the ground for pieces of wood or pieces of glass and stuff like that before the game. He was the goal umpire that all the young or the new goal umpires would look up to.
Probably the most outstanding goal umpire that I've ever worked with. 11 Division 1 senior grand finals, a record that will never be equalled, I think, in any suburban football competition, and certainly not at AFL level.
Umpiring with Brian, you knew you were in the presence of a professional, because every time I umpired with him before we went out to start the game, Brian would always call out, "Come on fellas, 2 minutes before we walk, 2 minutes before we walk, come on fellas."
But not only was he an outstanding umpire, not only was he an outstanding president of the association committee member, but at one stage he took a year off from umpiring to become chair of the Umpires Appointments Board. There'd been some issues between the umpires and the league, and again, Brian stepped in as the healer, the man to bring a little bit of law and order back into the Umpires Association and the umpiring department, and re-establish those strong links with the league.
For all of his life, he remembered the mistake that he made in a semi-final. Can you believe it? One mistake he made, and he didn't tilt his head, I think, to the right and get under the ball. He was about a foot off, and he said that cost him getting the grand final. So that's what a perfectionist he was.
He set the lead in standard, and there are still people umpiring today whose career has been deeply influenced by Brian Marriott.
After he finished his umpiring in the early 90s, he became coach and assistant coach, and then Lee Keane came from the AFL, who'd umpired a couple of AFL grand finals, and Lee and Brian were like Batman and Robin. They were the dynamic duo, and they were on the same wavelength, and they would rate their goal umpires at the end of each year, the top 20, and they'd probably have 1 or 2 out of place. They'd probably get 18 out of 20 every year, and Brian and Lee just worked in tandem. It was brilliant.
Brian has always involved his family in umpiring, and I remember in my first year of umpiring, his son Kim and I were umpiring together. In fact, we actually umpired a couple of finals together. Kim was one of our top field umpires, and at the same time, his youngest son Brett joined us as a goal umpire. Brett's been around to a number of associations, but in recent years, Brett's back here with the association, and I know that both the boys will be very, very proud of their dad. They followed in his footsteps.
His family was supportive right through. Fantastic. And he was just so, he was just an example to all other umpires in how to be professional.